Hey Vinyl community, what's going on? It's Tone, back for a really quick video. I was going to wait about another week before doing a video. Just a normal video, you know, recent listens and whatnot. But I forgot that today was the deadline for contest for Memphis Vinyl Jim and the Mrs. Their what's it called? 5 times your luck contest for 735 subscribers. 7 times 5 is 35, 735, and 7/5, which is today, July 5th. So, you know, life has just been taking me on a roller coaster ride. And so I have just been extremely consumed. Just trying to get around some work things, a few of the recording projects that I was slated to work on fell through. And one of them was my very first, sort of like my very first bona fide rock projects. I've worked with rock artists before in the past, but not in totality on an entire project. And so this was going to be my first, and that kind of fell through. But the good news is the reason why it fell through is because the band broke up. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the modern blues rock, hard rock band, Beware of Darkness. But they have been a staple over the past, 3-4 years on alternative radio and rock radio. Kind of like if you took maybe the Black Crowes or the Hypnotics and mixed them with Jet. That's Beware of Darkness. So I was going to be working on their 3rd album release, and the band broke up about, 8 months ago. Then got back together and then broke up for good. And so what's going to happen is the label is going to do a solo album with the lead singer of Beware of Darkness. So I'm just sort of waiting for this to come to fruition, and a few other projects that have kind of been pushed back. So just dealing with life and work, and but yeah, I wanted to go ahead and make this submission. Whether or not I get counted or not, it's just out of love for Jim and April, who are some of the most amazing human beings that have ever been part of my life. So I have a great relationship with Jim and April outside of the vinyl community, and always want to support everything that they do. And congratulations for this accomplishment on their channel. I'm going to do this video. So 5 times your luck, 5 questions or 5 tasks, I guess. The first one was, what song would you choose to be on constant rotation if you had to pick a song? Now, I'm not sure the exact stipulations. It was a little unclear to me, meaning, is this like for life, or is this just to pick a song that you would do that with? So I'm gonna assume it doesn't mean for life, unless I heard it wrong. But I'm just gonna choose a song that I would do that with, and that is in regards to the artist Mel LaRue. Now, Mel LaRue, if you guys don't remember, she was the lead singer of the modern soul R&B duo Groove Theory that was around mid to late 90s. Then the group broke up and she went solo, and has had many successful solo recording projects since then, and continues to. The song that I'm choosing is a song called No One Else. And it's on this album here, Mel LaRue, Morning. And it's the 3rd track on this record. You're actually hearing Mel LaRue in the background, but a different album. The album is Infinite Possibilities that I'm listening to. in the background. But this is her album Morning, and the song No One Else has a very deep meaning in my life, even currently. And so I could listen to that song forever and ever and ever and ever and just continue to listen to it and not get tired of it. Another one that I was actually going to choose that I didn't, because it seems to be over the past few years, it's become a little bit more mainstream, which is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with being mainstream whatsoever. However, it's made me a little bit bitter, because this song has been a very important part of my life, and I just think it's been exploited a bit. And it's great that people are hearing it and becoming familiar with the song, but the song is called Clair de Lune, and it is a classical piece from the late 19th century by the French composer Claude Debussy. And Claude Debussy is a classical era artist in classical music. Classical era, basically, for lack of better explanation, lasted from about the 1800s through to the very early 20th century or 1900s, and then we come into the modern era of classical music, which we're in now. But Claude Debussy, again, was a French composer. He's absolutely my favorite composer ever. And the song Clair de Lune was the third movement in a suite called the Suite Bergamasque. And it was one of the very first classical music pieces as a child that I became enamored with, and one of the very first pieces that I tried to begin to learn by myself on the piano. I still, after all these years, haven't mastered it. It's not a super hard piece, but there's just a lot of changes and a lot of maneuvering. There's a lot of changes in that piece, and it's not super easy. So, but I was going to choose that. You guys have probably heard the song. I'll leave a link to it below, as well as a link to No One Else, so you can hear those two songs. But if you've seen the movie Twilight or the Twilight series movies, you've heard this piece, and that's probably the point in time where the song became exploited a bit. And anyway, second question was, if you had to choose one album for the rest of your life to put on rotation and listen to over and over and over, what would that album be? And I could have chose quite a few albums, and I could have, delved way deep into my ridiculous elitist mentality as a record collector and pulled up some obscure record that cost $800 and said, oh, it would be this one. But that's bullshit. So I chose a record that was much more realistic. This record is by probably the most well-known entertainer of all time. This man had a fantastic voice from his childhood through the time that he passed away. The album that I'm going to show is, I believe it still is, the highest selling album of all time, and that album is Michael Jackson's Thriller. Whether or not you like pop R&B or music from the 80s, whether or not you like mainstream music or not, the fact is that this album is an absolute masterpiece, and there's a reason why pop albums become pop albums, and that's because they're just damn good. If an album is horrible, it's not going to achieve those type of accomplishments and obtain those type of accolades. This album is fantastic, from the songwriting to the track listing to the production. It's just a brilliant album. Again, whether or not you like Michael Jackson, whether or not you like pop records, there's just no denying every facet of this record, and I could listen to this thing over and over and over. This is the very, very first American pressing. It's probably the earliest pressing that you'd be able to find. It's an extremely early, it's an A stamper, and it took me a while to find a copy in this good of condition this early, but this is a fantastic record. This is the Japanese first pressing, and it's not that it's hard to find an original Japanese pressing of this record, but this is the earliest Japanese stampers. So this is it right here. We'll never get tired of this record. It is just a fantastic masterpiece. So Michael Jackson, Thriller. The third question was concerts. What was your favorite concert or most memorable concert? Being in the business that I am, one of the perks of being in the industry that I'm in is I've gotten to see so many different artists, so many different people live. I mean, in such a widespread array of genres. I mean, I've seen B.B. King, James Taylor, U2 several times. I've seen, I could go on and on and on and on and on. Prince a bunch of times. And it's been real easy. You know, it's a phone call. And it's allowed me to experience a lot. So I had a really hard time with this question. But I started thinking back on some of the more intimate shows I've witnessed. And what I chose was something that, and I'll tell the story really quickly regarding this particular situation. About 11 years ago, and it was, I don't remember if it was June or July, but I remember it was in the summertime. I was working on an album project, and it was the late afternoon, and I'm on my way to an actual, it was either a recording session or a writing session. I think it was a writing session. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was one of the actual managers at Amoeba Records at the time. And he asked me what I was doing, and I said I was on my way to work. And he says, "You're gonna have to skip work today." And I said, "Why?" He wouldn't tell me. He says, "Just, man, if you want to experience something incredible, come by the store." I didn't understand what he was talking about, and I said, "Well, let me call and see if I can get out of what I'm doing." He says, "No, man," he says, "you need to come now." And so I said, okay. So I called the artist that I was working with, and I said, "I'm either going to be late, and if I can't make it, I'll call you soon." So I'm driving to Amoeba Records, and all I can think of is there's got to be some sort of an event going on, and what other type of events. He's not going to call me there and be all panicky because of a record sale. It had to be a show. So I got about a half of a block away from Amoeba, and there was just a ton of people. I could see a ton of people outside of Amoeba Records. And it was really hard to find parking, so ultimately I found parking about 2 blocks away. And he had asked me to call him as soon as I arrived, so I called him, he wasn't answering. Called him, he wasn't answering. And then as I'm walking up towards Amoeba, about a half of a block away, he calls me back and he says, "Are you here?" I says, "Well, I'm a half a block away." He says, "All right, I'm coming to the front door." I went to the front door, he opens the door, he shushes me in, and what that ended up being was I was able to partake in witnessing Paul McCartney, his live performance, his infamous live performance at Amoeba Records in the summer of 2007. So that is probably my most memorable show ever. I believe they recorded that, and I believe that there is an album out of that live recording. Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I hadn't seen Paul McCartney live previous to that, and I've always wanted to see him live in an arena setting, and I have yet to do that to this day, and I hope I still get a chance to. But if I don't, that show beats any show that I have ever seen. So that's that one. Number 4 was your favorite book. I think I have it in the right order. So favorite book. I like a lot of books. I like science fiction. I like all kinds of different books. One of my favorite books is The Kite Runner by, I think it's Khaled Hosseini. Fantastic book. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, And now that Disney is making these Star Wars stories, which are connecting stories that explain how things connect or where things kind of came from, that aren't explained directly in the original 9 pieces of the full story. In the mid-90s, a book was released. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know at the end of number 5, which is Empire Strikes Back, it just kind of leaves you, high and dry. And then at the beginning of number 6, which is Jedi, all of these things have happened, and you're like, well, how in the hell did all of this happen? And you're like, what's going on? So in the 90s, the story of what took place between Empire and Jedi came out, and it's called Shadows of the Empire. And it is one of my favorite books. I was going to choose that one, but I realized that in the scope of everything written, something that I partake in reading every day that defines my life, defines who I am, and has been since I was 13 years old, would be this book here. And this is the Life Application Study Bible. This is the New International Version, 1984 copyright, which most Bible scholars consider to be one of the most scholarly translations, modern day translations that we have. And this has been my translation of choice for years and years and years, but this is the most important part of my life. And so I would have to choose this incredible book. All 66 books inside of this collection. It's just the most fantastic part of my life, no matter what I'm going through, good or bad, whether I think it's good or bad, I can always gain understanding, and I always find out more about who God is, period, through this book. So very thankful for that in my life. Last but not least, last question was television show. I'm not a big TV watcher anymore. If I'm watching things, which I rarely have time to do, it's movies. I have a lot of movies, and I used to be really deep in the home theater, just as much as I am an audiophile. And a few years back, I decided, you know what, I just want to focus on audio. But recently, I've been getting back into home theater as well. Nowhere near my passion for music, but I do watch movies, and it was very difficult for me with this question. So what I did was, I just kind of thought back, and I thought, well, what kind of TV have I been watching lately? And lately, I've been going back on into Amazon Prime Video and things like that, watching old television shows that remind me of my childhood. So 3 shows I picked that kind of span my very, 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 beginnings of my childhood all the way to my adulthood were 3 shows. So I picked 3. The first one was the television show Chips. I love that show. It holds a lot of memories for me and is very nostalgic. My, growing up in LA, my family has been involved in entertainment in one facet or another. I'm basically the only one that broke into the music industry. Everybody else has been in television and film. And my grandfather, on my dad's side, was very big in the special effects area. And he worked on Jaws, the original Jaws, and so many different movies. And one of the television shows he worked on was Chips. Doing all the effects and the crashes and things like that. And, he was one of the head guys on that show. And I remember being on the set of the show a lot. So that show is very nostalgic. Moving forward, The Cosby Show as a teenager, as a young teen, The Cosby Show was a very important part of my life. I really enjoyed that show. And then The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, as a late teen, early 20s, towards the end of the season, I became familiar personally with a lot of the cast members and the executive producers of the show, and built relationships in regards to that television show, which really helped me in my career along the way after the show was even canceled. So that show was a very important part of my life, and I loved The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So those three television shows, I chose to submit for the contest. So that's it. Those 5 questions, and congratulations, Jim and April. You guys deserve 5 times that amount. And I know it's a lot more than 735. No, I think I checked. It was, at least almost 800 or something like that. 760 or 770. Anyway, that's it. I'll be back soon, hopefully soon, with just a recent finds and recent listens video. So God bless Jim and April. VC, take care, and I'm out. Peace.